You're listening to the number one source for political, pop culture, and sports talk on the radio. The Julio Rivera Show. Hashtag Conservarican. With no fuck left to give.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, hit it!
We are controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Julio Rivera Show is on.
Yes, good evening. This Thursday, May 19th. And if you're feeling that thrill up your leg, it must be 10 o'clock on Thursday. And I'm Julio Rivera here. Welcome to the Julio Rivera Show. What a great show we have on tonight. Joining me this evening, we've got from the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax. Steve Malzberg will be in the building talking about the Mets, talking about Tom Brady, talking about politics, I'm sure. I was just on his show earlier this evening. One of my favorite columnists, John Hawkins from Right Wing News, will be joining me. We'll be discussing politics. I'm sure Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and Hillary Clinton and all of that cast of characters will be discussed this evening. Also, one of my good buddies, Red Nation Rising contributor and political commentator, former podcast host himself, Timothy Shea is here. He's a great guy. I love talking to him all the time. And we will also be speaking with Steve Lonegan. Steve Lonegan, who was the the chairman for the New Jersey Ted Cruz campaign. He's ran for Senate several times, or actually one time, and he actually ran for Congress as well. And he'll be on the show. It'll be very interesting to discuss what's going on in the world of politics right now with him. And actually, it looks like, is that Steve? Hello, Steve.
Yeah, nobody's answering that phone number.
Oh, well, that's what technical difficulties are all about. Is it you calling 202?
So let me understand. Let me read it back to you. 202.
Yes, sir.
738.
Yes, sir.
4042.
No, 4140.
All right, goodbye.
Alrighty, and that's what happens when you don't have a producer, and sometimes wires get crossed. And Steve will be joining us, I'm sure, momentarily. And this is just, I want you guys to understand, this is episode 2. These are the baby steps as far as the Conservarica, the Julio Rivera Show movement. We've got a lot of great things that are going to be coming on over the next couple of months. And here he is right now. Steve Lonegan, how are you this evening?
I hope it's working.
It is certainly working. And actually, our little exchange was caught actually on the live clip right before. See, because I'm working without a producer. And when you work without a producer, you got to think on your feet. And sometimes things don't go the way that they're supposed to go. But I digress. I'm very happy to have you on the show. How have you been, Steve?
I'm good. I'm good. Still getting over the disappointment over Ted Cruz. But, there'll still be a country. So we have to, as conservatives, continue to forge ahead. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to pay careful attention to what's happening in the state of New Jersey. Mm-hmm. There's some very significant economic problems, financial problems. So that's really what I'm focusing on today.
Well, let me ask you, right? Because right now we're going to pivot away from presidential politics for a moment and think on the local level. What do you think is the biggest issue facing New Jersey right now, or something that we need to keep our eyes on?
Well, the biggest issue facing the state is that we're losing our upper-income wage earners. Not even upper-income, Julio. We're losing middle-income wage earners. According to the statistics I'm reading, young people coming out of college are leaving the state because they don't see a future here. And people who are in the upper-income, retirees, people with significant incomes who are getting killed by income taxes are leaving the state. Mm-hmm. And who's left are two groups. Middle-income wage earners whose families are here, their kids are in school, and low-income individuals who are coming into the state to collect on our state's very lucrative welfare programs. So what we've done is we've made New Jersey a magnet state for welfare recipients, while we continue to drive out job producers and high-income wage earners.
Wow. One of the things that I've noticed, as a New Jerseyan over the last couple of years was that we were either number 1 or number 2 in the nation consistently in people leaving because of either the job market, the taxation, property taxes. It's really out of control. As a small business owner, and you can relate to this as well, it's next to impossible to turn a profit in this state.
Well, it might, look, it's possible, but why knock your head against the wall when you go to a place like North Carolina, earn that profit, and get to keep it? Mm-hmm. Instead of having to pay massive income taxes, property taxes, and deal with all the government bureaucracies that get in the way of businesses. I've dealt with it, you dealt with it. Or great states like Texas or even Florida, where you get to keep the fruits of your labor. There's a gentleman they wrote about the other day in the paper who was paying $10 million a year to the state government in taxes, so he left. $10 million a year. Now, you know what? If we had a flat tax or a moderate income tax, he was paying $5 million, maybe he'd stay. And by the way, a guy who's paying $10 million in taxes is also spending a lot of money locally, buying cars and expensive stuff and going out to dinner and joining clubs. So we just lost another great consumer, another great taxpayer. But we're seeing this a lot. We're seeing the state being bled by the failed policies, and let's admit it, 7 years of the Christie administration, combined with the continuation of a Democrat majority, working together to fleece taxpayers.
Wow. And Christie's up, I believe it's next year. Is there anybody that's on the horizon that you're looking to either support, or are you looking to jump back into it yourself?
No. The answer to both questions is an emphatic no. No, and then no again. In fact, I'm considering leaving the state myself. But you know what I have? I have an anchor that's called the grandchild, and grandchildren tend to be even more of an anchor than children because, if you're a middle-aged person or in your 20s or 30s or 40s and your career is expanding, you can take your kids and you can move to wherever you're not. But when you have grandchildren, it's not that easy. The grandchildren don't move with the grandparents. Yeah. Because my grandchildren, my daughter and her husband have their own careers to pursue, and they're doing it here. Yep. So grandchildren become even more of an anchor unless you're willing to live, down in Florida half the year, which a lot of people do. Look, it's not such a bad thing to spend 6 months and 1 day in Florida when you're a retiree or Arizona and gather paying New Jersey income tax.
Exactly. Yeah, I believe Derek Jeter did that when he was with the Yankees because he moved down to Florida and he spent like 106 or whatever, 183 days down there in
whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
And he wound up evading having to pay the New York tax.
6 months and 1 day. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if in a leap year you have to add another day or not, but 6 months and 1 day, and all of a sudden you're not paying all those income taxes. And the state can't force you to be a resident. So we're falling victim not just to the failed policies of our own state legislature, but we're also falling victim to the excellent, aggressive policies of North Carolina, of Texas, and Florida, who are basically taking our income wage earners, our investors, our retirees, and attracting them down there, where there's a better quality of life because of the lower cost of living. And of course, the Democrats in New Jersey are whining that it's not fair that these other states can do that. But you know what? They can't put up a wall around New Jersey. They're not, no matter how hard they try.
Yeah. It's funny. It's one of the smarter things that I've seen a politician do over the last couple of years is a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember, Rick Perry went out and he was campaigning for businesses to come to Texas, and he came to New York and he came to a couple of different states trying to draw business to come to Texas, saying, hey, Texas is open for business, our taxes are low, we don't charge state income taxes, and trying to get people to leave where they were, where they're struggling with overtaxation, to go ahead and set up shop in Texas.
Well, not just Rick Perry. Other states do that aggressively through different means. North Carolina at one point had a sign at their airport down, I guess, in Raleigh, Durham, saying New Jerseyans welcome to North Carolina. So you don't have to work that hard. People are pretty smart, and they wait a minute. North Carolina, let's see. No income tax, lower property taxes, less regulations, less government bureaucracy. Oh, and the weather's nicer. So I'm out of here. Now, look, New Jersey still has an awful lot to offer, and it can make a comeback. But under the current regime in Trenton, it's not going to happen for a very long time. Now, I will tell you, it's my opinion that should the right steps be taken by the state, that the state can be turned around very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say it's not going to happen for a very long time, that means we don't have the political leaders and the political wherewithal to take the necessary steps.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I think the job that Christie has done has left a lot to be desired. You know, people will make the argument that he inherited a tough situation from Corzine, but there's really no excuse. If you look at what, you know, like Scott Walker was able to achieve in a short period of time in Wisconsin, you know, there's precedent there for major changes that, you know, that are positive changes, you know, and you can't always hide behind excuses. I mean, I've always reasoned that Christie himself is a big government progressive, so they can sit there and they can campaign as conservatives, but in practical application, when they actually get to that executive position, it's not what they're actually pushing for.
It's not just, you know, the governor's most important job is to put the right people in the right places to do the job you need. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Governor Christie ever had the right type of thinkers economically, philosophically, to make the kind of truly dynamic, sweeping changes that you've seen in places that have made remarkable comebacks, like Ireland back in the last decade, that have made a remarkable economic turn, in other places. That's the kind of vision we need in New Jersey. And it's a very difficult one to advance, I will admit it. But there becomes a point where it becomes a necessity. Yeah. So I believe that if you see a Republican governor, a Democrat governor elected, that Democrat governor is actually going to have to govern far more conservatively than they'd ever think they would, purely out of necessity. Mm-hmm. You can only bleed the state so much before it collapses.
That's true. You know, it's funny, you brought up Iowa, and I just kind of wanted to, and I know we didn't really want to touch on it, but I just wanted to commend you on the excellent job that you did when you were out there for Senator Cruz. You were instrumental in training caucus speakers and organizing the effort. You know, the campaign obviously got started on the right foot, and, you know, that obviously started in Iowa with the caucuses where they won going away. They were very successful. And I know we don't really want to touch on it too much, but as a conservative right now, you know, what do you think is, you know, and you're saying obviously you're working towards New Jersey, but on a national level, what's left for conservatives now with this debacle of a general election we're going to wind up having?
And, you know, I don't want to be totally pessimistic about a Trump campaign. Mm-hmm. We have a way to go yet, mm-hmm. and there's a lot to be seen. I have to say, however, since Ted Cruz dropped out after Indiana, I'm not at all happy with what I have seen. Mm-hmm. I'm not seeing a conservative formation of a conservative agenda or a conservative administration forming. I've heard a Republican nominee, Donald Trump, who said he supports a $15 an hour minimum wage. Mm-hmm. He said at one point he's the king of debts, and we can print money to run up the debt. These kind of things I find, you know, very disturbing. So I don't want to predict negatively. I'm hoping maybe we'll suddenly see an epiphany by mm-hmm. Donald Trump, and he'll wake up a truly philosophical conservative who'll understand the fundamental principles of conservatism, because when you govern on those principles, you always govern well, and it's always prosperous. So let's hope that's the case. If Donald Trump calls himself a conservative and his supporters have to do the same, but then he governs as a liberal, it will destroy the conservative movement for a very, very long time. And it'll be a major setback because it will have told the world, well, a conservative doesn't work. You remember, Trump was a conservative. It didn't work. He failed. So forget this conservative stuff. We all now need to be progressives of some level or another. And that's my biggest fear.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, after 7.5 years of Obama, what we needed was a definitive reversal of course. You know, it would have been great. You know, we prayed, we worked, we tried as hard as we could. We didn't get Senator Cruz there in the position that he needed to be in. But I just really want to commend you on the effort that you gave in particular. And I learned a lot from just being around you during that period. And I thank you for all the wisdom that you imparted.
I appreciate that. Look, and all the people in New Jersey, like yourself, as delegates who are still on the ballot, by the way, come June 7th.
Yes, we are.
You are still a delegate, and all the work that went into becoming delegates, getting those signatures, putting together a phenomenal delegate slate from one end of the state to the other, a delegate slate ready to run, ready to win. It's very unfortunate. We find ourselves still on the ballot, and you know what? You still could run and win.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm planning on winning. I'm planning on winning in the 5th district.
But and still go to that convention.
Mm-hmm.
And going to the convention means that the delegates in that convention. See, here's what the convention is about, and many people out there, the vast majority of people out there, don't understand this. The convention is not just where we anoint the Republican presidential candidate, and that Republican candidate runs off and does whatever he wants, and he says, I'm the Republican, I'll tell you what Republican means. It's the other way around. We go to the convention, and we nominate a candidate whose job is to uphold the Republican platform, which will be determined by the delegates to that convention. Mm-hmm. They will vote on what's part of that Republican platform, and there will be battles over certain part of that platform. For example, in 1992, there was a big battle on the convention floor on the day of the platform vote, and there were those who were working very hard to remove the pro-life plank from the Republican Party platform, but the majority of delegates won, and the Republican Party is still the pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-small business, pro-small government, pro-low-tax party. Mm-hmm. Trump's job, when he gets that nomination, is to be the standard bearer for that platform. Mm-hmm. So the Republican Party is not a party of a majority vote for some guy or for some girl because they got the most votes in a popularity contest. The Republican Party is an organization of principles, and that's where people don't quite get it. Most people don't.
Okay, we're running out of time here, but I just want to ask you one final question. Do you expect any surprises at the convention, or do you expect a clean and easy nomination once all the issues are worked out for Donald Trump?
I expect no surprises. I know a lot of people think, but I will say this: in the next 2 months of that convention, Trump has got to behave. He's got to act and continue to keep the supports of those delegates, or there could be a surprise. If he gets totally off base on the Republican message, if his numbers drop, if suddenly Hillary Clinton has a 20-point lead going into Cleveland, well, anything could happen. Anything could happen. The delegates have the responsibility to assure that the Republican Party stands on its principles and nominates the right candidate.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Steve. Always enlightening. Please come back soon.
I will.
We did a lot of great work out there for Ted Cruz, but he came up a little short, but we're still going to fight because we're conservatives. Thank you for joining me.
Julio.
God bless. On the other side of the break, we've got Timothy Shea with Red Nation Rising. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the #1 source for political, pop culture, and sports talk on the radio. The Julio Rivera Show. #Conservarican. With no fuck left to give. The most important, insignificant stories of the week. What happened this week that meant absolutely nothing? Find out now.
Yeah, we're back. I have the fastest breaks in the business. That's like 20 seconds, station ID, segment introduced. And now I'm going to bring on my buddy, Red Nation Rising is in the house. My man, Timothy Shea, Red Nation Rising contributor and former host of Red Nation Rising Radio. How are you tonight, Tim?
I'm great, Julio. How are you tonight?
Good, and I committed the cardinal sin. I've called you Tim, and I know that you like to be called Timothy, so I apologize for that.
No apologies necessary, buddy, but I do appreciate the courtesy.
Exactly. You know what it is? I always take the shortcut route, so you know what I mean? If I can call... One of these days, I'm going to call you T, and you're going to be especially angry with me.
No, actually, I go by T with all my close friends, so absolutely call
Wait a
me
minute.
T.
I'm not your close friend then?
You're going to be... No, you're J from now on, man.
Okay, J and T. There you go. That works for me. Hey, a lot of crazy stuff going on, in today's world. One thing in particular, and this is kind of like a pop culture segment, but we always try to tie everything into politics because whether or not you're interested in politics, politics is interested in you. And, me being from New Jersey, I was actually just in New York City. There's this wacky misgendering law. There's a series of fines that have been, instituted or introduced by the state of New York. Should you make a mistake in, how would you say it exactly, Timothy?
Well, it's not the state; it's the city. This is our buddy Bill. Okay. This is our buddy Bill De Blasio.
Oh,
because Mike Bloomberg going after the big gulp wasn't enough. De Blasio has to completely deconstruct New York City, and they're going to be fining employers and landlords who intentionally and consistently ignore using pronouns such as Z, her, HIR, to refer to transgender workers and tenants who request that those pronouns be used. I've never heard of Z, ZE, or
what is ZE for? Is that a man,
HIR.
a woman?
Instead of he, it's Z, and instead of her, HER, it's HIR. So these fines, Julio, can be up to $250,000. Okay, we're not talking about a $250 fine here. This is the Commission on Human Rights, the new legal guidelines that are coming out of the De Blasio administration. The city's completely out of control. But what do you expect from the capital city? Albany's the state capital, but basically the leading city in New York State, where you have Mario Cuomo, or son, Andrew, is governor, who says that conservatives can just get out of New York. Well, guess what? We've lost 11 congressional districts since I cast my first ballot in 1980. That means we have 11 fewer electoral college votes.
Wow.
We're down, 12 fewer. We're down from 41 to 29 now. People are voting with their feet. Business regulation is out of control in New York State. Everybody's leaving. The businesses are leaving. They basically kicked Remington Arms out of Philly in New York. The southern states are picking up our losses. And
Steve Lonegan was just talking about that. Let me ask you a question, though, Timothy. What if, Pat from Saturday Night Live walked into your store?
Or Chris?
Who's Chris?
Well, Pat, Chris, it's the gender-neutral names.
Right? Oh, okay, the gender-neutral name. No, but do you remember, Pat, that you couldn't tell by looking if it was a man or a woman? So if you accidentally misgender, you can be out. You can lose your business over it. That's even worse because there's a little bit more to saying, no, I won't bake your cake. But, if you're just dude, let's say, sometimes some people say, dude, they just use the phrase dude.
Right.
Would that automatically result in a fine?
I would say no, because girls nowadays call each other dude. So I think that's become kind of gender neutral. But here's the problem.
Let me ask you a question, right? Let's say you call me
okay.
dude, but on that particular day I identify as a woman. Can I sue you for money?
Well, under this, no. And here's the real problem with this, Julio, is they will come back. You remember on the radio show, I referred to the octopus. What we're fighting here on the left is an octopus. There's many tentacles, but they're all moving at different speeds in different directions. But the forward momentum is all forward. It never moves back. It's always forward. First, we had homosexual adoption by court fiat. And then we had homosexual marriage by court fiat. And then we had you got to bake the cake. And then we had you got to make the pizzas for the reception. And then we had the transgender bathroom issue. These are all manufactured issues that they think up one after the other to keep moving their agenda forward. It's like a ratchet wheel, right? It always goes forward, never goes back. And what they will rely on in this is that the legal guidelines say intentionally and consistently don't use the pronouns that the tenant or employee requests. So they'll say, well, this is perfectly reasonable. You're intentionally and consistently violating this person's rights. It's not the government's business. That's the problem. The government is inserting itself into every nook and cranny and crevice it can find. Yeah. The best meme I've seen in months was Angry, is it called Angry Cat or Grumpy Cat?
Grumpy Cat, yes.
You know Grumpy Cat, right?
Of course, we all know.
And this was my friend Brooke McGowan, I want to get to her in a minute because she's one of the great hopes of this nation. People like her.
Yeah, she's running for state senate in Oklahoma. Yes, I love
Oklahoma
Brooke as well.
Senate District 17. She's a freshman. This is her first race, right in Broken Arrow outside Oklahoma City. She's a great local candidate. She had the meme, and it was Grumpy Cat, and it said up top, "Should the government
no.
And then no, exclamation point. And that's exactly where I am. Should the government? No. The government should provide for the common defense and run the interstate highway system and do a couple of other things under the Constitution, and everything else is optional, so let's get rid of most of it.
Exactly. Yeah, you know what's funny? And I was discussing this with a friend of mine yesterday. This is all really like a not so thinly veiled, or depending on how perceptive you are, attack on the First Amendment.
It's not thinly veiled at all. This is a frontal assault on the First Amendment.
Exactly, yeah, because at the end of the day, and the social justice movement, they find ways to, I guess, kind of either bully you or intimidate you into falling in behind whatever their cause may be at the moment. And
absolutely,
and
$250,000. This is an excessive fine under the Eighth Amendment.
Exactly, yeah, they're creating a tort.
It's an Eighth
Amendment
Amendment
for
assault.
something that's not real. Yeah, it's like they're creating this out of nowhere in order to either to intimidate you into silence or to shame you into silence, one way or the other.
But they do something even more insidious, and that's that they use the media outlets to try to convince us that we are outnumbered, and they are vastly outnumbered. And that's why it's so valuable to have shows like yours on, these alternate media, social media sites and alternate media sites, and they're terrified of us because they know that we outnumber them, and that is why Facebook is censoring us. That is why Twitter is censoring us. So that's another issue that's been bubbling up this week.
Yeah, and it's absolutely insane when you really think about, like, if you look at people that truly have or suffer from, and it really is a mental disorder, like gender dysmorphia, whatever you want to call it. It's such a small, insignificant portion of the population. I was thinking this, right? Since it's technically a mental condition, why don't they just use the handicap bathroom or give them handicap bathroom access? Well,
there you go, and that's the real solution. I posted a meme that kind of went viral yesterday. It's three signs. It said, if you are supposed to use this bathroom, and it was the men's bathroom sign, and you follow my wife or daughter into this bathroom, and it was the women's bathroom sign, you're going to need to use this bathroom, and it was the handicap bathroom.
Yes, I did see that one. I love that one. And that's so true, because, I mean, if you really talk to the average conservative man, or just the average common sense person, you don't even have to be a conservative. If you have a wife, if you have a girlfriend, if you have a daughter, you have a granddaughter, a sister, an aunt, a mother, you don't want a man going into the bathroom behind her, because the majority of bathrooms have multiple stalls. It's one of those things you don't want to have to deal with that. And like if you're a younger woman, they can't defend yourself against a man, you're going to be consistently in a precarious situation. The majority of bathroom stall doors are easy to knock down. We've already seen in the state of California, there was a man that walked into a women's bathroom with a wig on. He wound up getting arrested after spending, I think he was in there for a couple of hours, standing on top of the toilet with a camera recording all the women that came in using the bathroom.
Yeah, it's just absolutely vile and disgusting. But, speaking of California, this isn't just a human species issue, okay? Tweety is a 7-year-old Weimaraner in California that identifies as transgender, and he was born a female but identifies as a male. And notice I used the he pronoun. And he was given a blue collar at birth. He's been living his whole life as a male dog. Well, he was just accosted by another dog, a beagle, for using a male tree to pee on. Because the beagle said that, the beagle likes to go to that tree and with all the puppies, and Tweety, the female dog, was peeing on the male dog tree. It's a real issue nationwide, especially in California. But even it's hit the sports world as well. Did you hear the story out of North Carolina?
Yes, I believe the certain quarterback of
Tony Romo was arrested. Yeah. Tony Romo was arrested in North Carolina for using the men's bathroom. I mean, where are we going to go from here, Julio?
Yeah, but I mean, you know what? But that creeps me out. I don't want Tony Romo in my bathroom. The men's bathroom is for men. Men only.
We got to finish up here, but I do want to say it's important. Red Nation Rising has been an amazing phenomenon. We're now easily over 1 billion impressions a month. In March, we hit 1.3 billion, averaging 40 million impressions per day. Mm-hmm. And it's because we do outnumber them. They want to isolate us. They want to think that we're outnumbered. They want to think that we're different, that we need to keep silent. Well, we're not going to keep silent. Okay, we're standing up. We're speaking out. We've got great people like Brooke McGowan running in the Oklahoma 17th Senate. In the 22nd House District in Connecticut, we've got Doc Pettit. This is the doctor. Remember, his family, his wife was brutally raped. His children were murdered about 10 years ago in New York. He's moved to Connecticut. He has taken up the position. He is standing up, and he's taking up the position that we need to do something about what's happening to our country, and he's running in his freshman effort in Connecticut. You know what? John Katko, my grammar school and high school classmate, is running for re-election. He's a freshman representative here in New York 24. In New York 21, we've got Elise Stefanik, who is the youngest member of Congress at 31. We have a lot of great young Republicans, and I'm really not so interested about the presidential campaign this cycle. I'm really, really, really focused, and Red Nation Rising is focused on solidifying the gains we've made over the last 6 years in state houses and in both houses of Congress. We need to retain these Republican majorities. We need to retain the Republican governorships in the state house because the census is coming again. That's where our focus really needs to be.
The gubernatorial races are of particular importance, especially for the people watching, for the possibility of a convention of states. But everything's kind of in the air, I think, because right now we basically are going to wind up, for all intents and purposes, with a presidential election pretty much pitting two Democrats against each other. And the possibility does exist that we can lose some of those gains. Yeah,
I'm going to be on the Trump train 100% in 2 years when he runs for governor in New York against Andrew Cuomo. I will be behind Trump 100% in 2018.
Well, you know what? That's one that I could probably get on board with, to be honest with you. Listen, Timothy, it was great having you. I want to have you on again.
Absolutely. Anytime. Always happy to come on with you, Julio. Congratulations on the new show, the new network. You're knocking it out of the park. We need more great voices like yours.
Well, thank you. Red Nation Rising forever. Don't ever forget that I rode to CPAC last year on a horse for Red Nation Rising. Let's not forget that. God bless you, Tim. We'll be talking soon. And thanks, on the other side of the break, we'll be on with John Hawkins from Right Wing News.
Politics got you down? Is your team in last place? Is your significant other sleeping with your neighbor? Well, cheer up. The Julio Rivera Show is on. Deal with your problems afterwards.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, hit it!
We are controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Julio Rivera Show is on.
Yeah, I turn around the fastest breaks in the business. I can't even get over it. Julio Rivera here, and somebody that you guys are just going to love talking to is about to be introduced. He is the founder of Right Wing News. He's one of my favorite columnists, featured on townhall.com, as well as his own great columns on Right Wing News. He's a staunch conservative and one of the people I respect most in this business. He is Mr. John Hawkins. And how are you this evening, sir?
I am fantastic, and those are high words of praise. I really appreciate that.
Oh, well, when you're good, you're good. But it's good, nice to talk to you. I haven't seen you since CPAC. Ever since CPAC, that was, I believe, on the heels of Super Tuesday, which was kind of disappointing to the conservative cause. Since then, we saw, all the primaries unfolding, I guess, and, ultimately it ended a couple of weeks ago in Indiana. How do you feel right now? I mean, obviously, we're all disappointed with the outcome as far as what we're going to be left with for a general election, but what do you think right now, and I kind of asked Timmy a little bit before and Steve Lonegan, what do you think conservatives should be focused on now that we didn't get, the ticket we wanted?
Well, the biggest thing is whether you like Trump, and I don't, whether you like him or not, focus on the people down ticket. There's a lot of people down ticket that need your help. It's going to be it would be difficult for us to hold the Senate under good circumstances. These are not good circumstances. The House, if we lose badly, could be in play. I think we're going to have a lot of trouble. So I would say, hey, turn out whether you like Trump or not, vote for those other people down ticket, and hopefully we'll make it through this without taking a cataclysmic amount of damage, but who knows?
Yeah, Timothy had alluded to that as well. I mean, we fought hard. We won back the House in 2010. We won back the Senate in 2014. Based on results, I mean, it's almost like the Republican Party was having a surge there, and I thought we were on a roll and kind of doing well. But based on the results of, the 2015 Cromnibus, the 2016 Omnibus, these people were unhappy, and I really do feel that, those gains are really at stake here. We can lose those very easily. I could see, some upstart Democrats coming in and taking away some flimsy seats. In addition to that, some of the people that have been there for a while, there are a couple of races. Like I had Paul Nehlen on last week, who's challenging Paul Ryan in the state of Arizona. Our guest next week, Alec Molesky's there, as well as Kelly Ward, that's fighting to take out John McCain. Are there any particular races that are down ticket that you're interested in?
Well, you named them off. I've met Kelly Ward. She seems very nice. I'd like to see her topple John McCain. McCain has terrible numbers in Arizona. Renee Elmers is getting pounded here by Club for Growth already, so they're looking to take her out. Paul Ryan's, that's an interesting race. I wouldn't mind seeing just about anybody in leadership toppled. And Paul Ryan might be one of them. I don't know. Although I will say this, he's popular in his district. It would not be easy to take Paul Ryan out. He's not someone like Boehner or Cantor that people are really going, he sucks. I wish we had a chance to get rid of him, but we can't. He's actually liked in his district, so he may be a tough guy to knock off.
Yeah. What's funny, and one of the things that I was noticing, because, the conversation is always going to go back to Trump in a certain way. What are your impressions on him getting through about 80% of the primaries with his website and his proposal? I believe he put out his proposal last September 28th, his tax plan, and then him going through 41, 42 states and then reversing course on his own tax plan.
Well, you're going to see a lot more of that, I suspect, because Trump really, there's a lot of issues with his campaign that got swept under the rug. He really won because, hey, he had a certain number of people he appealed to. There were a certain number of people, Drudge, Breitbart, those kind of guys are in the tank for him, and that helped. But when you get to a general election, there's so many issues, like he's not going to be in a split field anymore. He is going to be going one-on-one. He does not have a professional campaign staff. I know he's got some people there who are competent. There's not a lot of them, though. It's really a train wreck. They don't do any of the sort of things with demographics that he's behind anybody ever. He's like if you start tomorrow, you're almost in the same level Trump is. His fundraising is going to be really difficult because he did not have a super PAC during the primaries. He made a big deal about how he was self-financing. Now he's reversed that, just as I knew he would. But again, he doesn't have a fundraising apparatus set up in place. And I know he's saying, well, the RNC will help me with this. Well, they'll try, but they can't do that. They're not designed. It's sort of like FEMA coming, okay, we need FEMA to come in and fix everything in New Orleans. Well, that's not really their job. They come in after. They don't rescue people. And
the funny thing,
the RNC does.
Yeah, and the funny thing is he ran such an anti-establishment campaign that the people that he appealed to, do you think that they're going to go ahead and give money to, GOP.gov or whatever? They're not going to want to give money to the establishment because supposedly their support of Trump was supposed to be their middle finger to the establishment.
Exactly, and I'd also add that one of the things that these guys have to do all the time, if you want to get a fundraiser to work with you, you have personal meetings with them and you make phone calls. I mean, some of these guys are spending hours a day on the phone talking to these rich donors and buttering them up. Well, now, okay, Trump's doing the same thing, but he doesn't have the patience for that. He is not going to – I cannot imagine Donald Trump spending 3 hours a day on the phone with donors to get this stuff done. He'll get a few of them, but he will probably be out-organized and outspent in every key state by a lot. And that's a big deal. They will be much, much better at turning out their voters. And as bad as Hillary Clinton is, keep in mind, her numbers are probably now at a low ebb. They've still got their primary going on. At some point, Bernie is going to give up the ghost. And let's face it, they're both very left-wing politicians. There's not that much real difference. As I said on the radio with someone else the other day, it'd be like if it came down to John Kasich and Jeb Bush for us.
Well, exactly.
You could say, I like Kasich, but I like Bush. Well, at the end of the day, it's like it doesn't make much difference. And it doesn't make much difference whether you get Bernie or Hillary. So I think a lot of those people are going to come home. Her numbers are going to pop up even higher. I think Trump is – I know there's people who are trying to spin it like he's in this thing. I think he's just way out of it. I think he's going down in a landslide, bigger than McCain or Romney.
Yeah, one of the exactly, and I was making that same point the other day to someone. Like, I was looking at the actual numbers. Like, if going into, and I'm not sure what the numbers look like after this Tuesday, but if in terms of total votes, total votes cast in primaries, Hillary Clinton has had somewhere around 12.5 million votes. Donald Trump stood at about 10.5 million votes. And Bernie Sanders is at about 9.5 million votes. They make this big deal about how Donald Trump has broken records with votes. He doesn't even, in terms of primary votes, he's 2 million. He's already 2 million votes behind Hillary Clinton. And and if you consider all the Bernie Sanders votes, you figure about half of those people are going to go to Hillary or more. People were trying to say, oh, well, Trump will probably get some of the Bernie Sanders people. I don't believe that necessarily to be true at all.
Trump will end up getting less of the Republican vote than Hillary does of the Democrat vote. As unhappy as they are, they're not that different. I mean, when I look at Donald Trump, I look at a guy who seems fascistic to me. He's not a conservative. He doesn't represent my values. I left the Republican Party. I filed as an independent.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so if you're saying to people like me, hey, Donald Trump represents you, no, he doesn't. Neither does Hillary Clinton, but neither one does. I'm kind of in the libertarian thing where they're in every year where they sit there and say, well, gee, there's two candidates running and neither one represents me. Well, that's kind of where I'm at, and I think with a lot of people are. And Trump, unfortunately, because of his style, which is very nasty and very insulting, I mean, there's a lot of people he's personally insulted. They're not going to ever come around to the guy. Or there's a lot of people who are just appalled by some of the things he's done, like making fun of the handicapped or just going on and on and on, who are just not ever going to feel good about themselves voting for the guy. This is a guy who, has said he's never asked for forgiveness, even though he's had adultery, but claims he's a Christian. There's so many things I could go and just say, this is just not someone who belongs in the White House. Now, neither is Hillary. But, I wouldn't vote for her either. So, I'm not here to just beat up on Trump. I mean, I'm fine with just analyzing everything. But, yeah, I think he's going to have an incredibly difficult time winning when you get right down to it.
Now, you brought up the libertarian movement and whatnot. There was a recent poll that came out that showed Gary Johnson getting 10% of vote, 10% of support in a three-person race between Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and himself. Would you consider going third party or promoting third party? I mean, obviously they're not going to win the national election this year, but do you think it's important that people that really feel disenfranchised by both parties start maybe grooming a third party like the Libertarian Party by casting as many votes as possible for it in this cycle?
The difficulty with our system is it's not like the Israeli system or the British system where you can have all these different parties and they cobble together a working government from, let's say, 3 or 4 parties. We end up with 2 parties. And if there is another party started that really captured a lot of interest in, let's say there was only one party, and there practically is, that was anti-immigration. Let's say they were very ferocious and everybody else was for it. Well, then eventually, if it got popular enough, one of the parties would co-opt it. So it's very, very difficult to start a third party. In fact, the last time we had a successful one was when the Republican Party wiped out the Whigs. And, we're talking about, 150 years ago. So it's very, very difficult to start a third party in our system. And what would tend to happen if we actually did get a third party that got any traction is that it would peel votes from one side or the other. And it would probably, if we start one, and it got some traction, well, it would just mean we'd lose a lot of states.
Yeah, it's really scary stuff. I was looking actually at at Gary Johnson. I had actually interviewed him once before, and some of the things that he said made a lot of sense. I identify myself, as a conservative, but I think from a social aspect, I really don't have a problem being somewhat socially liberal. I think that there's a lot of manufactured outrage, and a lot of it is nonsense. It doesn't really have anything to do with the government, nor is it anything that the government should be involved in. I look at Democrats that sit there and they go, well, I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton because I'm a Democrat and I feel that women's rights or this or that. It's all nonsense. They're not thinking in terms of economic issues. We live in the freest society in the world. And I think that people lose sight of that. They have no realistic outlook on the way that the rest of the world works. And, I think that's unfortunately, that ignorance and that manufactured anger. You see it on the college campuses. You see kids looking for safe spaces. Like, they can't deal with actual society. I mean, like, I'm more disappointed in America now than I've ever been at any point in my life. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I mean, we're not the same America that I grew up in the 80s.
I don't think that people who are millennials, that kind of thing, are going to have the same opportunities we did. And I mean, how old are you, Julio?
I will be 39 in 2 weeks.
Well, you look so young. I was going to figure you might be mid-20s, hell.
Thank you, sir. I always thought you were younger than me.
Well, not quite, man. I'm up there, brother. But, a lot of these younger people, I feel bad for them because they're not going to have that opportunity. The country's not as good as it was. The economic opportunities aren't there. I can tell you now, if you're 20, you always hear people say, well, Social Security or Medicare won't be there. But it's been there so long, people think it's always going to be. It's not. Social Security and Medicare cannot survive in their current form. I mean, what people have been, like Paul Ryan, have been trying to do is save it so that some of these people get it one day, but the Democrats have made it impossible. So what's going to happen one day is the checks, I don't know if they're going to stop or they'll be dramatically cut back, but a lot of good people are going to get hurt. And they're not going to do that because it's for any reason other than that they're going to have to. And I can tell you our debt is such a crushing burden. We're at a point now where if the interest rate spiked, we'd have a lot of trouble paying it as is. And eventually they're going to spike. It's a matter of time. I mean, maybe even just when Europe straightens itself out a little bit and the money feels a little safer over there, you could see our interest rates spike a lot. So there's a lot of issues, a lot of things to worry about with our economy. I think we are in probably a more precarious position than we've been at any time since World War II, but most people don't realize it because a lot of the issues are economic. There's not a military power. There's terrorists threatening us, but we're not being threatened with conquest, but economically we're in deep, deep trouble.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with our reliance on the global economy system as opposed to just taking care of our domestic issues. Everybody goes, well, I want, a president that can negotiate better deals, trade deals and this and that. We need to stop focusing so much on how we do business with the rest of the world. That's important. I understand that, but we have to make it easier for businesses and startups and everything to operate and be successful in this country. I mean, ultimately, the great creator of jobs in this country is always going to boil down to the small business.
Yeah, that's true, and I think what people lose sight of is how much the world has changed. I mean, something like, for example, shipping containers have only been around since the 50s. Wow. So if you start saying like something like China, that wasn't possible 50, 60 years ago. Now, with computers where you can manage where all the stuff's going, with shipping containers, when you're competing with people who are working for $2 an hour in a relatively industrialized area, or somewhere like India, where you have college-educated, hard-working people that you can hire for $2 or $3 an hour, there's certain jobs that are just going to go away. And that doesn't have to be bad, but what it does mean is that those type of jobs where, let's say you were uneducated and you could go out and work, I could work 50 hours a week as a longshoreman, and just unhauling freight, et cetera, they're gone.
Wow.
And I think it's just moving to a point where you've got to be more educated. And that's something that's not easy. Not everybody's going to be able to do it, and it's hard.
Well, if Bernie Sanders becomes president, then we'll all have free college, and we won't have to worry about it.
Well, yeah, that's a fun idea. I think I don't know what all the stuff he wants to do, and that's the thing too. The Democrats, they're still thinking, hey, we got all the money in the world. And Bernie Sanders has got enormous spending programs. Just think, Obama added a huge new entitlement program. Just think about that. With all the trouble that Social Security and Medicare are in,
he went ahead and started a whole big healthcare one, and that's the most expensive one you could possibly come up with, and the hardest one to manage and the hardest one to make solving. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense.
And the sad thing is, free college, free this, free that. What people don't realize is, they had a lot of free stuff in the Soviet Union too, but everybody was poor.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. It's just they don't have any understanding or appreciation of why we got to this point. America is not the rule around the world. America is the exception.
Yes, it is. The great experiment, and it worked for 200 plus years, but it is more at stake now. I think that we're at this tipping point now than we've ever been in our history. But listen, John, thank you so much for joining me. I want to have you on again soon. Always great to talk to you. Tell everybody where they can get you at.
rightwingnews.com. You can also check out my columns on Town Hall. And if you're on Facebook, we have the Right Wing News page and the Click It Conservative News page. Like both of them.
All righty. And on the other side of the break, thank you so much for joining us, John. On the other side of the break, we've got Mr. Steve Malzberg coming up. Don't go anywhere.
Politics got you down? Is your team in last place? Is your significant other sleeping with your neighbor? Well, cheer up. The Julio Rivera Show is on. Deal with your problems afterwards. This Week in Sports with Julio Rivera. Win, lose, or tie. Someone's getting paid way too much.
All right, and I've got the quickest breaks in the business because that's how I do things. Joining me now, Mr. Steve Malzberg. How are you, Steve?
Good. I hope you can hear me.
I can certainly hear you, and you sound great. What's going on with the Mets? Last time I looked, it was like 9-1.
Oh, my God. I got off my show tonight on Newsmax Television. You were on the show. Great job as usual.
Thank you, sir.
And I get in the car, and I'm telling you, I'm hearing Howie Rose, and I'm hearing Josh Lewin, and they're almost this is not a knock at them. They almost don't know what to do. I'm hearing, and I don't know what's going on. I'm hearing Josh Lewin almost like make excuses. Well, the Mets blew a double play, and Howie Rose says, yeah, but every ball has been hit so hard. And I'm like, oh, my God. And they said, and if this keeps up and they take Harvey out in this inning, you're going to hear the boo birds for the first time in his career. At that point, it was, I believe, 7-1 Washington. Oh, my gosh. Matt Harvey got pulled after 2 2/3 innings. He had given up 9 runs, 6 earned, and it was the worst performance by a Mets starting pitcher in about 25 years.
Wow. You know what? Steven Matz earlier this season, I believe it was his first start of the season, gave up about 6 runs in about 2 innings himself. Is this the floor? I mean, I think that this is the floor for Harvey. He can only go up. He had the health problem at the beginning of the season, the issue with what was a kidney stone or whatever it was with his bladder. Do you think physically he's not there yet? Because he's throwing it hard, but he's not throwing it 97 miles an hour hard.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, Terry Collins said that in the post-game interview, which I managed to hear before I came on with you, he said that he was talking to his pitching coach, and they said that something's not right. Since he had that situation in spring training, he's not been the same Matt Harvey. And they don't know what it is. Harvey claims to them, I don't think Harvey spoke to the media, but Harvey said to them that he feels fine mentally, physically. A lot of speculation during the game on the Mets broadcast that maybe it's more mental than physical or a combination of both. Should he be sent down to the minors to start again, to rehab and work his way back up, but clear his head, miss his next start, which would be Tuesday against Strasburg and the Nationals. Wow. Terry wouldn't commit to that being his next start. So this is, I mean, and they talked about body language, that he looks defeated, that he gave up a 2-run home run in the first to Daniel Murphy, who's now hitting, by the way, about 420. And Murphy also had at least one double tonight. So, but they said that on the first inning home run, which I didn't see, they said you could just see it's like Harvey curled up, like he has no confidence.
Yeah, you know what? And I think this is what I think it is, and just me being somewhat of an armchair analyst. Last year, when he came back, the plan was for him to utilize a curveball more because it put less stress on his elbow than throwing that hard snapping slider. That slider that he had in 2013, by the way, was beautiful. That was his best pitch. And now when he came back this year, supposedly this was supposed to be the comeback of that nasty slider. So he got out of doing, what he was successful with last year. It's almost like you're learning how to pitch 3 different ways, or you're attacking the same thing 3 different ways in 3 consecutive seasons. And I think maybe it's more mental, and he's burnt out, because where he would have in 2013 thrown a slider in a certain situation, last year he learned to throw a curve there, and he was successful with it. So now maybe he trusts the curveball more than the slider, and maybe it's because that sometimes is a dilemma when you have 4 good pitches. I mean, he legitimately has 4 out pitches. He doesn't know what to throw in what situation anymore, because the velocity hasn't dropped off that significantly.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Harvey did speak, and I'm actually getting some information as you were making that very astute analysis. He says he believes it's mechanical, and he needs to do. He says I need to fix it. And when asked if he wants to make that next start against the Nationals on Tuesday night in Washington, he said it's my job. So he said, yeah. He says, I'll leave it up to Terry, but it's my job. It's what I do, and I just have to work through this. So, he doesn't have any answers. He doesn't know. And this is, and let me point out, I mean, tonight it's all about Matt Harvey, and rightfully so. And DeGrom has not been the DeGrom of last year for whatever reason, although he's working through it more effectively than Harvey. We saw Colon have his worst game probably of his career now that he has 2 families to take care of. So that happened yesterday. But the Mets got 1 run today. They had 1 run yesterday. They had 2 runs in their 2-0 win thanks to Syndergaard. And then how many runs did they score in Colorado? They've lost 6 of 7. And you combine the runs, they are not hitting the baseball either.
Yeah, but you know what? We're lucky that this is happening now. It's May 19th. If this was happening in September, even if it was happening in August, and it would be a cause for concern. But they've got a lot of time to work through it. Listen, even after this series, which they lost the series 2-1, they're only a game and a half back in the division. So it's not like all is lost. But the one thing that I worry about is their psyche.
They are 2.5 in 3rd place, by the way, behind the Phillies, who, when the Mets lost those early games to the Phillies, everybody said, how the hell can they lose to the Phillies? They suck. Well, the Phillies haven't sucked so far this year. They got a better record than the Mets.
Really? They're 2.5 out. Okay. But the other thing, too, think about the psyche of these pitchers. They're young. So, I mean, they pitched more than they ever pitched before in their life last year. They went into October. I'm worried a little bit about DeGrom. Like you said, his velocity still hasn't come all the way back like Harvey. Do you think that this is something like where in a couple of weeks when the weather gets warm, their arms will be stretched out and they'll be back to hitting the numbers that they did before?
I don't know. I think I'm not really worried about DeGrom. But I think there's legitimate concern to be worried about Harvey. He has, I can't recall. I know he has 3 wins. I think he's 3-6 or something, but he has not had a great game. He's not had a Matt Harvey, if you will, game this whole year. And, I go back to thinking about, he had something on a blood clot in his bladder or something.
Yes, he did.
And he didn't miss a beat. It's like he had some procedure, and then he was like pitching a day later. Maybe he needs rest. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably psychological too, because he was for so long looked at the next coming. He was like the new Dwight Gooden, and now he's kind of been surpassed a little bit with the exploits of one Noah Syndergaard, who is absolutely a beast with not only the bat, but with not only pitching, but with the bat, and he's been kind of the big story. Do you think that maybe not being the top guy or getting all that media attention is affecting him psychologically?
Well, I tell you what, I would have said or thought if you said, hey, you know what, next year Matt it might not be Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey might have to fight to be the number 1 pitcher on this staff. Matt Harvey might have to fight to get all the media attention that he says he really doesn't want sometime, but we know he does. Matt Harvey might have to fight to be the superstar, the single superstar in New York and get the models, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I would have said, yeah, and it's going to be great for Matt Harvey and great for the Mets because he'll be better than ever, and so will Syndergaard, and they'll go head to head. But that if he can't live up to that, if he can't battle for that, then that's not a good sign. I'm hoping that it's something that they could pinpoint. Nothing. I don't want it to be anything serious physically, but something that they could say, here it is. Here's the treatment. Here's the rest. Do this, and then it'll be fixed. Otherwise, He's got to fix it in his head.
Yeah, and it's almost one of those situations where he kind of needs maybe a sports psychologist or whatever the case may be. I mean, because physically, like I said, he does look fine. I wanted to shift gears for a second and talk about, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not exactly sure how all this works, but Tom Brady was suspended for 4 games. And this suspension was rescinded last year, and he played the entire season. And now he's suspended again. What is that all about? Like, how does that work?
Well, it went to court. I mean, the suspension was appealed, and it was dropped, and then it was reappealed. It was appealed under the collective bargaining agreement, I believe, and the arbitrator dropped it, and then the league, I think, appealed it, and the court ruled with the league.
Because then I did wind up hearing somewhere there where he could reappeal it now and play as it's being appealed. So this could be something he could potentially, if they injunctions and refiling paperwork in court, it could be something that maybe if he only has a couple of years left, he may never serve that suspension.
Right, that's true. And I got to say at this point, look, is there any way he didn't know? Of course he knew. But is there any way he's the only one? Belichick didn't know. The clubhouse people didn't know. The general manager didn't know. No one knew. Only Brady. He's the only one who's got the ownership didn't know. Nobody knew. Just Brady. I don't buy that.
They should attach that suspension to Aaron Hernandez. I think that would be the fairest thing to do.
Yeah, just give it to him as consecutive sentences. Yeah, when he's finished with life, he could serve.
Exactly, he gets life plus 4 weeks. 4 weeks. That'd be great, actually. I want to shift gears a little bit now to politics just for a second. We had a great conversation today regarding, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and all the interesting things that are going on in the country right now. And I just kind of wanted to go as far as Hillary Clinton, right? We know that there's a possibility that she can be indicted, regarding the email scandal and whatnot. Do you think that if that was to actually, like, let's say that if she was arrested, which would be unprecedented, because I was thinking about this earlier, what actually happens? Is there any way, like, let's say if she gets arrested before the convention, could there be some kind of procedural wrangling that kind of gives it to Bernie Sanders? Or how do you think the Democrats would handle that if she was to be indicted?
I couldn't even imagine the despicable, disgusting, reprehensible, lying Debbie Wasserman Schultz sticking up as the head of the DNC for Hillary and saying, well, she was only indicted. She hasn't been convicted. I mean, please, I think that's one of the reasons Bernie's staying in, because he figures it might come to that. But I think the Democratic Party, if that were to happen, might try to pull Joe Biden out of a hat, and then you'd never have the Bernie people come. But I'm not as I don't know. When you say indicted, it would be one thing for the FBI to recommend an indictment, and it would be quite another for Barack Obama's Justice Department, led by Loretta Lynch, whose biggest concern is that transgenders could use any bathroom they want, to actually indict Hillary Clinton. So I think a recommendation of an indictment from the FBI would be enough to sink her, but we'd have to wait and see when that comes down.
Wow. A lot of things are going to happen, between now and November, and it's going to be interesting to watch. In particular, because this is the most interested I've actually been in the Democrat Party. You'd be you're surprised some of the stuff that you see online. I've seen a lot of Republicans even jumping on the Bernie bandwagon just because they see him as another, it's almost similar to Trump in a way. And I'm not saying that they're anything similar at all, policy-wise, because Trump is not the train wreck that obviously Bernie Sanders is. But for some reason, the fact that, he has the shtick, or he has the the whole the rhetoric that he's not part of the establishment, he can't be bought, he's an independent, blah blah blah. But there's a lot of people that are actually backing him, and some libertarians are jumping on board with him. I don't know what's going to wind up happening, but I posed this question to John Hawkins earlier. What do you think the prospects are? Because there was a poll that I read. Gary Johnson, the former governor of New Mexico, who's running on the Libertarian ticket, got 10% on a poll that it was him, Hillary, or Gary Johnson. Or Trump, Hillary, and Gary Johnson. Do you think that for disenfranchised Democrats and conservative Republicans. Do you think that going third party on this cycle, maybe to set it up for future cycles, maybe, you know, the values of the Libertarian Party means more to them than what they're getting from the Democrats or the Republicans? Do you think that that's a worthwhile endeavor, or do you really think that it's a waste to even try to go third party?
Well, I think I got to tell you the truth. I think that the former William Weld, former Governor Weld, is probably going to be the running mate for Johnson. I don't know if you heard that or not. But now, look, I think Johnson could get some votes. But I think any Republican who votes for considers Sanders or wants Sanders, or a conservative that thinks they want Sanders, even a libertarian, it's not. If you want to vote for the government taking 90% of what you earn, then you're not a libertarian, and you're not a Republican, and you're not a conservative. You're almost a Marxist, if not certainly a socialist. So I think if you're thinking of voting for Bernie Sanders and you think you're anything but a borderline Marxist, then you better re-examine yourself.
Yeah, wow. Well, I mean, today was very eye-opening when I was on your show, some of the stuff that we did and we're talking about. I mean, I am definitely, and I'll give you this because I'm not ready to make any bold proclamations, but I will say this. I am more stop Hillary than I've ever been stop Trump. That I can give you.
Well, after you left and we went to commercial, we came back on with Kristen Tate. A female caller wanted to speak to you. She said, I wish he was still there. She said, because I don't understand. And basically echoing what I said to you. And this isn't aimed at you necessarily. I mean, I love you. This is aimed at anybody who's saying similar to what you're saying, or saying this. Well, you know, I was a Cruz supporter, and, you know, it was a very heated thing. And, you know, I'm not convinced about Trump, or saying what Paul Ryan is saying, for crying out loud. I don't care. It is not. And I said at the time, I would vote for Paul Ryan. I would vote for Mitt Romney, who I despise. I would vote for John Kasich. I don't care, as long as it's not Hillary. And I don't understand any hesitation, because if it's not going to be Trump, it's going to be Hillary. And unless you're ready to tell your kids, yeah, I know there's no more freedom of speech. I know that there's abortion on demand. Yeah, I know that there's affirmative action. Yeah, I know that, and for the next 45 years after Hillary gets through with the court, unless you're willing to defend that to your kid by saying, you know, but Donald Trump wasn't conservative enough for me, then you got a problem.
Well, you make a compelling argument, Steve. So, but this is something we're going to be chewing and going back and forth with here for a little while. But definitely, I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
you're always great. You're a sports talk legend, in addition to being a political talk legend. And everybody needs to check out Monday through Friday on Newsmax TV at 7 p.m. That's the DirecTV 349, Dish Network 223, and Fios 115, the Steve Malzberg Show. Who knows? You might even see me on it.
That's what I was going to say. And, of course, Julio Rivera, prominently featured very often on the show. We love having you, Julio.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, Steve Malzberg, Steve Lonegan, John Hawkins, Timothy Shea, the Julio Rivera Show. Catch us next Thursday at our new time, 10 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody, and God bless.